It's number 6, which is entitled Serious Violent Crime, and this was clearly one of the major sort of refocuses of the police and crime plan in terms of themes, and I have a specific responsibility as well as the Association of Police and Crime Commissioner lead on serious violence. And indeed it's very timely today because I've already chaired a meeting of that portfolio group this morning at the national level, and then also been part of a conversation with the Home Office and our own violence reduction unit immediately prior to this call. So clearly in terms of the cover report for this, we talk about the response to the knife crime issues, some of the government task force work that they've established, and as I've said, my own particular role around having a portfolio lead on this. There's also some very good work I know that's been done through Programme Precision in response to serious violent crime. That's the West Yorkshire brand and response to that. And of course there are lots of other funding arrangements that I put in place with our through our partnership executive group into organisations like Huddersfield University, the youth offending teams in West Yorkshire, and the ongoing Safer Communities funding, which is often very much targeted at groups dealing with serious and violent crime. And indeed, since 2018, for example, there have been 49 groups receiving funding through that, all making a real difference at the local level in many instances. Just by way of finishing off, before handing back to West Yorkshire Police to give an update, I've already mentioned the establishment of the Violence Reduction Unit, and I'm pleased about the progress that has been made there, and that's very much also linked into the Operation Gemlock work, which I know is going to be updated within this report, and the impact that that work is having around reducing aspects of violent crime. So with that, I'll hand back over to you, Russ, with regards an introduction on the serious and violent crime update report.
Certainly, thank you, Commissioner. So you've touched on your police and crime plan, and obviously West Yorkshire Police, in terms of delivering against those priorities in the police and crime plan, do have a focus around serious violence. Clearly we react to it, we investigate it, but moreover we have seen significant investment brought about by Operation Gemlock, which is the proactive arm to tackle serious violent crime, in particular knife crime. And I'm going to ask Kate Riley to present the report very shortly, but what we have found is there's a high proportion of Black, Asian, minority ethnic victims, and as a result of the Gemlock team being very much intelligence led, they have been operating in those areas to reduce the number of victims, and we have seen to date a 12.2% reduction in knife crime. So clearly they are operating in the right areas of business. But again, just harking back to that element of disproportionality, what it does bring about is some unintended consequences, where we have seen disproportionality in the number of stop searches, use of force, mitigated against the fact that they are all recorded on body-worn video for review. So whilst I'm saying, and I just prefix this with the issue of disproportionality, I'm not saying it's wrong, it's just around developing our understanding around disproportionality. When you look at it against the backdrop of the demography down to ward level, the disproportionality does diminish significantly. So I just wanted to present that and just prefix it with that element of disproportionality, and then hand over to Chief Superintendent Kate Riley. Kate.
Okay, thank you, Deputy. Thank you, Commissioner. So we were asked to look at some themes in relation to serious violent crime. And the first one, the Deputy has already mentioned, which is around inequality and disproportionality, and specifically why West Yorkshire Police deploy into higher BAME populated wards. And a sort of follow-on question from that was, what are the drivers for higher crime rates in those locations, and West Yorkshire Police's partnership work to reduce recurring patterns. So as the Deputy's just mentioned, obviously not exclusively, but we have a specific operation called Operation Gemlock, which is funded through surge funding, which is the force's proactive response to reducing knife and other bladed crime and associated violence. So first of all, those operations deployments are very much intelligence led. So packages detail recent offending locations for offences such as violence with weapons, robbery, serious assaults, even up to attempt murders. And they provide up-to-date profiles for suspects wanted for offences of violence, including domestic abuse. So where do we go then? The intelligence directs that the Gemlock is deployed in areas that are beneficial to reducing violence. So many of these areas have suffered previous instances of violence with weapons, robbery or other gang-related violent incidents. And over the last 18 months then, Operation Gemlock activity has seen a particular focus in 4 particular wards, and these are Great Horton and Little Horton in Bradford, Vermontoft and Richmond Hill in Leeds, and Gipton and Hare Hills also in Leeds. And 2 of these wards are in the top 10 highest in terms of the BAM population of the force. And as the Deputies just alluded to, actually, organised crime groups have an overrepresentation of BAME involvement. So in West Yorkshire, our most recent data shows that for all knife crime, 27.8% of victims and 29.2% of offenders are from a BAME background. And again, as the Deputies mentioned, Operation Gemlock shows on the face of it high stop and search disproportionality when considering white and BAME searches across general force data. But of course, this data needs to be taken in context, and in particular context to the actual population of those particular wards that we are conducting stop searches and other activity in. So just in terms of the stop search scrutiny then, the Deputies mentioned that our officers routinely use body-worn video, whether they're conducting stop and search activity or any other activity. And Gemlock SLT have worked really tirelessly to scrutinise and understand disproportionality in order to achieve transparency. And there's been participation at every district scrutiny panel, and Operation Gemlock have extended an invite to community members to view their work. So they're really, really open and transparent about what they do. So team leaders on Operation Gemlock review a minimum number of body-worn video clips relating to stops made by staff every month, and take any requisite actions in accordance to what they see, and any corrective or learning opportunities are obviously addressed. And when they were one of the first teams actually to undertake recent unconscious bias training, which is currently being rolled out across the force. Now, clearly in relation to partnership working, the George Floyd incident in the US has impacted on communities across the world, and the Black Lives Matter movements following was a reminder of how communities are feeling particularly strongly about inequality, racism and disproportionality. And this, in our own West Yorkshire, has galvanised community leaders and partners to work together to understand and seek to address those root causes. So in terms of partnership working then, as a result, a strategic partnership and community group was established to work in seven key areas, looking at poverty and disadvantage, education, health, culture, employment, place and overrepresentation in the criminal justice system. And each area has a lead partner and a key community leaders who can bring lived experienced elements and are part of the solution. So in relation to the VRU, Commissioner, which you mentioned, and obviously it's absolutely your area of work, very much governed by the OPCC. This is a real opportunity to inform wider scrutiny of Gemlock activity and join up with the work of the VRU in tackling the causes of violence. So in terms of those drivers then, obviously we need to understand those socio-economic drivers of violence, because that's going to be key to preventing and addressing risk factors in the future. But we know that social inequalities, including poverty and unemployment, social discrimination, both increase adverse childhood experiences and amplify their negative impact. And we also know that in terms of a difficult childhood, reduces or can reduce life expectancy by as many as 20 years. Individuals who have suffered 4 or more adverse childhood experiences are 20 more times likely to be imprisoned at some point in their life. And there's a clear link obviously here to early intervention and early action. So in West Yorkshire, 63% of our small neighbourhood areas are amongst the most deprived nationally, whilst 3 of the top 20 constituencies have the highest level of child poverty within the UK are in West Yorkshire. And the highest number of violence-related hospital admissions and ambulance call-outs are in the most deprived areas of West Yorkshire. So therefore, that makes, in terms of partnership work to address some of these issues, a real priority, and working in the criminal justice system to develop those targeted approaches to preventative work. So in terms of what's going on then, in terms of the partnerships and specifically the Violence Reduction Unit, they are working across 7 main work streams in order to break the cycle and steer young people away from violent offending. I don't propose to list them all, but by way of an example, a couple of examples of these are the A&E Navigator, so Accident Emergency Navigator, where this programme aims to support people to move away from violent or chaotic lifestyles by providing support with some of the social issues that make many frequent attenders in our emergency departments. Criminal justice example, so there's a thematic work stream on criminal justice to establish interventions in a range of community and secure settings designed to divert young people away from custody and reduce reoffending. And this model is informed by learning from year 1 and delivered by West Yorkshire Police Liaison and Diversion Service and also the St Giles Trust Custody Diversion Project. And Commissioner, as you've just alluded to, there are lots of local based initiatives. So each Community Safety Partnership, CSP, has been allocated VRU funding within their local area. And the interventions they have chosen to fund outlines delivery against the West Yorkshire Violence Reduction Unit needs assessment and response strategy. So those are just some of the partnership activities that we've got going on that particular theme. The second theme is young women and girls' involvement in serious violence and gangs, including county lines, and how West Yorkshire Police seek to engage and support women and girls away from criminal activity and understand the hidden role they often play. So first of all, again, an area of work that the Violence Reduction Unit is very much concentrating on alongside West Yorkshire Police, further exploring and identifying options to support this area of work. So a group has been set up to discuss females' involvement in gang-related activity, which consists of not only representatives from the VRU, West Yorkshire Police, but also the Youth Justice Board and third sector organisations such as the Together Women's Project and St Giles Trusts, Liaison Diversion, who have specific interventions to work specifically with females. And in relation to younger women, then, we are actually trying to seek a suitable partner to deliver an intervention that's been identified between West Yorkshire and Harrogate Healthcare Partnership and the Violence Reduction Unit to support women and girls in early intervention and prevention, those aged between 11 and 25 years. And in addition to that, of course, we constantly monitor victim and perpetrator age ranges. We engage young people on social media platforms, promoting Crime Stoppers Fearless campaign, inputs through Safer Schools, pupil referral units, and joint working arrangements and training with the Children's Society. And we also monitor emerging trends through serious and organised crime, organised exploitation of vulnerable people, and safeguarding governance. So we're picking up on any sort of tactical intelligence that's either police or partner generated. And of course, the Modern Slavery and Human Trafficking team are also benchmarking other forces in respect of their approach to this kind of exploitation. At present, our recorded flags for young women and girls are very low, and we have mostly adult females who are complicit within organised crime. But we do completely understand, Commissioner, that we've probably got part of the picture, and we need to try and get towards the full picture of what that looks like with women and girls. So moving on then, the third theme was around how West Yorkshire Police ensure that young people drawn into serious violence and gang-based criminality are considered firstly for their status as exploited individuals, and wherever possible are supported away from criminal behaviour and further exploitation, including at points of arrest. So this is actually quite well established now. So the Violence Reduction Unit have commissioned an extension of the custody diversion provision in Leeds through St Giles Trust, which is being expanded across the force. And this allows for immediate intervention and engagement with young people at the point of arrest for serious violence. So a really important initiative there. And there's also a process which notifies all the district child vulnerable and exploitation teams, CVETs, about the young person and any risk of exploitation. So this generates a risk and vulnerability and strategy meeting where partners meet with the young person and their family to discuss a support plan and pathways. And this may well lead to a multi-agency child exploitation meeting. So there are a number of specific initiatives within the Violence Reduction Unit that are being funded to ensure that young people are supported away from criminal behaviour and activity where they have been drawn into serious violence and gangs. Again, I don't intend to mention all of them, but just to mention a couple of them. One's called SOS Plus Second Chance. So this is delivered by St Giles's Trust, and this project has been running since the start of the VRU in 2019 and will continue. So SOS Plus facilitators and peer advisors have been embedded within a particular area of Leeds and deliver preventative group sessions and intensive one-to-one mentoring aimed to tackle knife crime, gang activity, county lines and CSE affecting young people who are vulnerable to exploitation. And these young people are supported to stay safe and make positive lifestyles. And then the second one I was going to mention is called Outcome 22, which is an educational prevention package aimed at schools positively intervening with young people without having to criminalise them or necessarily have the need to exclude them from school. And that is around low-level knife crime carriage within schools, and will be rolled out in the new year. And the last theme then is how Operation Gemlock, which I've mentioned earlier, work is being further integrated into everyday policing, so that understanding and supporting our young people, it becomes better and becomes a key role for us all. So I suppose the first thing to say is that, as the Deputy has just said, Operation Gemlock has seen some remarkable reductions in violent crime. And this is due to a lot of factors, but mostly the enthusiasm and dynamism of those who put themselves forward on an overtime basis to work on the initiative. And we take that really, really seriously on Gemlock. People are expected to work hard and effectively on Gemlock, and if they don't, they're not invited back. It's as simple as that. I very much see Gemlock as an exemplar in a lot of areas for the force. And just in terms of taking learning back, before we get onto young people, we have a number of volunteers who take part on Gemlock from various areas of the force. They might be dog officers, they might be from roads policing unit, as well as patrol and neighbourhood policing. So they have a vast array of skills. And what happens on Operation Gemlock is that people have a chance to be really, really proactive in reducing the number of victims we have for violent crime, and specifically knife-related crime. And, you know, rather than being, reactive to calls, it presents a real opportunity for that proactivity. They learn new skills and they bring those back to wherever they volunteered from. So whether that might be neighbourhood policing, patrol, roads policing, whatever it is. So that's a real positive benefit of doing work with Operation Gemlock. The second thing to say is that the officers are encouraged as part of their daily deployments to engage with locally delivered initiatives on early intervention and diversion. So this is to allow officers to speak to young people who are engaged with those processes and better understand things like adverse childhood experiences and understand the causation factors for violent crime. But of course, inevitably, the officers on the street inevitably, deal with young people on a day-to-day basis in carrying out their activity. But we've already talked about that scrutiny around body-worn video, acting professionally and in a friendly manner. And it's worth also saying that Operation Gemlock works very much hand in hand with the Violence Reduction Unit, and of course police resources are used in delivering a lot of key diversionary work streams alongside the Violence Reduction Unit. I've already mentioned Outcome 22, but there's also things like Positive Choices, which is delivered in partnership with Leeds United. So that's hopefully a reasonably brief overview of those themes, and hopefully covered the areas that you wanted to cover, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kate, and I'll just follow up on a few of those points. And of course, yeah, the reference to the Violence Reduction Unit is made throughout the report, and clearly that is something, as you know, that I'm well involved with through the office and the portfolio work that I mentioned earlier. And in fact, we've looked to merge some of that with our Reducing Reoffending Board because there are some key crossovers. So we're looking to take those opportunities wherever we can to join up some of the existing groups and structures. And also, as you highlighted, that there's been some specific focus around girls and gangs, and really trying to make a big impact in the sort of journey and life chances of some of those young females who sometimes, unfortunately, are on the periphery of this type of behaviour. And working with the youth offending teams is very important as well. And I'll also just mention, before getting into questions, the actual the Wi-Fi, the West Yorkshire Finding Independence report that I helped to commission recently, and that's looking at the experience of people with multiple and complex needs around how we can work with them better through criminal justice processes in order to prevent further reoffending, including violence within that. So we did get a lot of feedback from some of the service users, and the Sunnyvale projects that you'll be aware of over in Calderdale has been well involved in some of the referrals and working with some of those individuals as well, which is positive. So coming to the first question, and it's really just if you could give an update regarding the latest figures for knife crime across West Yorkshire, including the arrest data as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of a 19-month comparison, sort of pre and post Gemlock, so knife-enabled crime is down 12.2%. So it was 4171 in the 19 months prior to Gemlock versus 3662 since the operation commenced, which represents 509 fewer victims, which is a really good result, and we rank very highly in terms of national figures on our Operation Gemlock. In terms of arrests then, 12 months taking us to the end of October 2020, there were 1,446 arrests, and specifically linked to the under 25s, that's 609, excuse me. And in the 12 months to October 19, there was 1302. So you can see there's quite a significant increase in arrests of 144 increase in arrests over that 12-month period. So yeah, they continue to bring in very good results to Operation Gemlock.
Yeah, no, and you've referenced it to that particular intelligence-led activity. So yes, I agree, and that they are impressive results in terms of reducing knife crime. Just moving on, and page 1 and 2 talks about the organised crime group or gang-related serious violence in the force areas, showing an overrepresentation, which you talked about, of black and minority ethnic involvement, namely for all knife crime, 27.8% of victims and 29.2% of offenders are black and minority ethnic. So are you able to break down the data across age, sex and ethnicity?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of all victims then, male represents 68%, female 32%, and of those, white 72%, Asian 19%, black 4.4%, and mixed 3.6%, and other 1%. In terms of offenders then, male 89%, female 11%. That breaks down into ethnicity: white 71%, Asian 15.5%, black 7.3%, other 1.5%, and mixed 4.7%. If you'd like me to specifically break down BAME victims, Then we have male at 81.2%, female at 18.8%. And in terms of age, then we have the 0 to this is victims 0 to 15 category, 4.8%. 16 to 29 category, 45.5%. 30 and over, 49.7%. And then in terms of BAME offenders, then 97.8% male, leaving 2.2% female. And in terms of the age breakdown, then 0 to 15, 5.4%, 16 to 29, 56.5%, and 30 and over, 38%.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Thank you for providing that data, and I guess it plays into the next question, which is sort of referenced at the bottom of page 1, which you talked about, Kate, around the stop and search at the ward level, and really understanding the context of deployment of activity into some of those areas based on intelligence. And it's really just, if you could say a little bit more about that and how you can perhaps offer some reassurance using that data to some of our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I was saying is that whilst on the face of it, it looks like Operation Gemlock is more disproportionate in terms of the use of stop and search than the force average. Actually, taken in context, and I mentioned 4 ward areas there where Operation Gemlock predominantly patrol, and I've talked about why that is. And I've also mentioned that a couple of those ward areas are in our top 10 in terms of, a high proportion of our BAME population. So if you take an example such as Gipton and Hare Hills, whilst stop and searches have risen threefold in that particular ward area, despite the increase in policing activity, the ratio, so in other words, the disproportionality ratio, has only risen marginally from 0.6 to 1. So in simple terms, that basically means this, when it was 0.6, if you were a white person on the street being subject to a stop search in Gipton and Hare Hills, you were more likely to be stopped and searched if you were white. And now it's marginally gone up. So it's basically, you've got an equal chance of whether you're a white person or a person from a BAME background of being searched in that particular ward. So I suppose the point I'm making, Commissioner, is that as a force overall, if you take statistics overall, it might look like a disproportionate situation. However, what you've really got to delve down to is into ward data. And disproportionality, it's probably worth saying, is something that we take very, very seriously. And I myself chair a disproportionality threat delivery group, which has just started in the last couple of months. The deputy will be chairing, starting this month, a disproportionality board. And we have conducted a vast amount of local research around understanding disproportionality, whether it be stop and search, criminal justice outcomes, and a whole host of things. And that report grows. And also, what I would say is that we've also done a review of the academic research which is out there around disproportionality, and specifically in relation to stop search. And that talks about 5 key areas. The key areas are discrimination and racial bias, street population availability, approaches to deployment, accuracy of the data, and crime rates. I've already talked about the fact that we're undertaking unconscious bias training throughout the force, and that's being rolled out as we speak. And actually, if you look at the academic research in terms of street and population availability, approaches to deployment, accuracy of the data and crime rates, we kind of discussed that in my presentation, I suppose, about where we aim stop and searches in this case around serious violence. And I know the accuracy of the data is really around, of course, the census data, which of course is quite out of date at the moment. The last census, as you know, Commissioner, was 2011, and we're due one obviously next year. So there are some issues around accuracy of data, but that's what I'm trying to get over, really. It's important to drill down into ward level to fully understand that picture.
Yeah, no, thank you. And these are the conversations we clearly need to have with our communities. And I know that we are having some of those conversations. And, following the Black Lives Matters movement and the George Floyd incident that you referenced, we know these things are very real to members of our community. So thanks for that. And just finally, it was just to... I guess where stop and searches are reviewed, as you've said, through body-worn camera footage, etc., and you've said that the standard is high in terms of the reviews that have been undertaken. Where there is any sort of corrective or learning opportunities, can you just explain what happens as a result of that?
Yeah, well, essentially the sergeants on Operation Gemlock, who are they're kind of part of the furniture, if you like, for Gemlock. So the PCs come in from neighbourhoods, patrol, etc. But the sergeants are a constant, which is really, really useful and helps to really drive standards. So they will review a proportion of body-worn video as they pertain to stop and searches every single month for the officers that come through. Where there are learning points, so that might be in relation to the reason why the stop search was carried out, or it may be the way the officer came across to the particular person who was stop searched. That is always shared with the officer, whether that's positive, whether that's negative, or whether that's just an observation. So that's shared. Now, clearly, if there was a real breach in pace, that would be addressed through learning opportunities, and if it was really serious, obviously through performance measures. But the whole purpose of it is to understand how officers come across, not make officers frightened of doing stop and searches, which they have been a bit frightened in the past to do, but to use that power appropriately and legitimately, but also point out where things aren't quite right and where we can make improvements. And as I said earlier, Commissioner, we Operation Gemlock staff do attend the scrutiny panels which each district have, where a proportion of their stop and search and other scrutiny areas are looked at by independent people within the community. They're really open and honest about what they do on Gemlock. They're really open to feedback, and they're really happy for any member of the community to join them on their patrols, to be really open and transparent and take any learning away. So as I said, I do consider it an exemplar of activity. Of course, we're not going to get it right every time, but we've probably had upwards of 800 police officers go through Operation Gemlock, which is really significant. And if those officers are taking back some street skills, some real good practice in relation to stop and search and other proactive initiatives, then that for me is a success. Let alone the reductions in violent crime we've seen as a result of Gemlock and other initiatives.
Okay, thank you for that explanation, Kate, and thanks for the update and answering those questions.